Hello there, it's David Taylor and I'm back with another one of my video blogs for the Pelargonium and Geranium Society. We're up to just a few days before Christmas now, so I thought I'd give you a bit of an update with how things are going. The very mild weather is continued. I've never known such a mild period of weather at this time of year. It really has been exceptional. I know up north and in Scotland you've had it a little bit colder. You have had some colder spells of weather. So I think it's been a bit more of a sort of normal early winter period for you. But for us down south it's been exceptionally warm and exceptionally mild. Now for Pelargoniums, of course, it hasn't made a massive amount of difference. The main reason being is that with all the mild weather, we've had a great deal of cloud, and Pelargoniums in general respond to light. And because of that, the Pelargoniums have remained relatively quiet and haven't moved a great deal during this period, despite the very warm, almost warm conditions that we've had. And that is because, as I say, it's very much the light. They really respond to light, but because it's been so dull, generally dull, in the last week or so it has brightened up a little bit, but they haven't responded to that. So they're just, relatively happy with what's going on, and they're not moving too quickly at the moment. Now, something I have been doing, I have been potting on plants. I have been potting on a number of my smaller plants, sales plants and things like that I use for when I go around doing lectures. I've also been repotting some of my plants that may have been in their sort of final show pot for about a year. What I tend to do, and I'll go through an example of that in a minute, is just take the pot out, take some compost off the bottom, just take some off around the root ball, and basically just put some fresh compost around it, give it a little bit of a water, and let that settle, and that'll grow on nicely once the weather begins to turn and the light begins to turn in around about a month's time. So that's what I'll show you an example of today. But that's what I've been doing. I've been continuing to clean up plants. In the last couple of weeks, I suppose, I've been able to open up the greenhouse a bit more. So the botrytis has calmed down a bit. It's just a question now of just going around your plants about once a week or twice a week, depending on sort of on the conditions, and just continuing to take off any sort of botrytis infected leaves and things like that. So it's important to keep your eye on that. But hopefully we're past the worst of that now, and we can begin to sort of move on as we pass the shortest day, which I think is today or tomorrow. We're filming this on the 21st. We're at that point now where the light is at its lowest. So we start to move through and move forward now into the days just very slowly beginning to open up again after today. We don't really notice it, to be quite honest, until about the end of January. But the plants will respond. If we get any bright days, as we get well into January, they will notice the difference and it will spark them into a little bit of life. We are only really, I suppose, about 6 or 7 weeks away from stopping time for the show plants now. So, things will begin to move once we get over that Christmas and New Year period. Once we get into that new year, we begin to look forward to that new season. Right, now I've got an example here of a plant. This is a bicolour Stella, actually. It's quite a nice plant. It's called Stella Venante. It's bred by an Italian chap. It was released by Vernon's when they were still going. It was around about 10 years ago, I want to say. And I quite like it. It's got lovely large single blooms of sort of a vibrant pink. In the label I keep a little potted history of its life. So this was a cutting that was taken actually 2 years ago, in October of 2013, and a little potted history on its back. First potted into it probably about a 5-inch pot in May of 14, and it was got into this 6-inch pot over a year ago, in October 2014. So that really is now, it's used up. I mean, it's really been totally reliant on any liquid feed that I've been giving it. I did put it in some of the shows this year and it didn't do too badly. It's quite a nice plant, but it is desperate really to be repotted. And I'll see how it goes. If it does, if it looks good come show season, I may use it again for show work. But it's a good stock plant to have to get young cuttings from once it really gets growing away in the spring. So I'm just going to show you what I do and how I do some repotting of plants. Okay, so I've just closed in now to give you a bit of an idea of what I'm doing. Now what I do, the first thing that I do with the plants is actually make sure that they're very dry. I mean, at this time of year, if plants get very dry, they're not going to be stressed at all because they're not respiring, they're not, the plants aren't sort of using any energy and they don't need any water to grow really. I'm only watering my plants, certainly a little dribble in the bottom of their saucer about once a week at the most. And I've let this one, because I wanted to pot it on, I've let this one dry out completely. And I'm just going to take it out of its pot. And there we are, there's solid root ball, it's what you expect really. It's pretty packed, the roots are all sort of around that base there. And what I'm going to do now is knock off a lot of this compost, particularly around the top initially, because that's where it's at its loosest. As I say, I may use this for show work, but I want this plant to survive. I want the stock plant from it, if nothing else, to be able to get cuttings from it once it really gets growing again. Now the thing with all bicolour zonal type plants is that they really do grow very slowly at this time of year. They don't put on really much in the way of growth at all, whether they be stellar bicolours or ordinary zonal bicolours. They don't grow much at all at this time of year when you're only keeping a minimum heat of about 5 degrees, which is what I'm doing at this stage. This is mostly because bicolours ideally need a bit more warmth than the sort of minimum of 5 degrees that I'm keeping them. They do look relatively vibrant this year, mainly because I think of the very, very mild conditions. So that's that's why their prep's looking probably a bit better than they normally do at this stage in the season. So there's that root ball in a 6-inch pot. And all I'm going to do now is just break off about the bottom 2 inches of this plant. It's very dry, very crumbly because I've let it dry out completely, but the plant won't come to any harm from that at this stage of the year. I also take some off the sides. You can see it's revealing all the roots, and I'll show you what I do with those roots in a moment, because I want to be able to get some fresh compost around the side of that. But it's very clean, it's looking pretty good actually, this. So we've got a bit of loose root there now, and what I'm going to do, I'm just going to get a pair of scissors and trim those roots off, just to sort of put it in line with the rest of the root ball. So I just hold the stem there. I clean these scissors, make sure they're clean by rubbing with a bit of a bleachy bit of kitchen roll or something along those lines. And I'm just going to snip off just to tidy those roots and snip them off, and they'll be ready to grow nicely into this fresh compost that I'm going to give it. I won't give it a lot of water when I first pot it because they don't need it at this stage. So there we are, just tap off any loose compost. And that's probably gone down now to the equivalent of about, I don't know, 4.5, maybe 5-inch pot. But they really will respond when it starts to grow again once I get it back up into a 6-inch pot. Okay. This is my standard mix that I've used and I've shown you in the past. Got a clean pot here, and so I'm just going to put a bit of the compost into the bottom. Not too much because I want this to be sunk relatively low. And there we are, that's just going to plop down in there. I'll probably put a bit much into that. we've got about 1.5 inches of fresh compost at the base, and I've got a nice bit of area to be able to just back infill with some fresh compost. Now this compost that I'm putting in is fairly damp. I'm not going to need to do much watering here at all. I will probably just sit it in a saucer of water for about 30 seconds, just to give it a bit of little bit of water at its base, so that the roots can just get a sense that there is some water for them to go out and search for. There we are, that's looking pretty good. I'm filling in right into the holes in the middle. Tap it down, that's really all you need to do. And that's looking pretty good. And that'll give it a bit of a fresh boost. I've kept it in a 6-inch pot. I could have gone up to perhaps a 7 or even 8-inch pot to just keep it purely as a stock plant. But I want to see if I can get it in the shows this year, so I've kept it down to a 6, and we'll see how that goes. Now on the label, I'll just put re-potted on the 21st of December, and that'll be fine. That'll keep its potted history going. I'll just sit that now in a saucer for no more than about 30 seconds, just to literally wet that base, and then I'll just stand it back on the benches. And I won't need to water that again until probably 2, 3 or even 4 weeks' time, depending on the weather conditions, of course. So that's about it for now. I have now more or less caught up with a year's worth of videos, so I'm probably only going to do one a little bit less often now, just to, if there's anything different or anything more that I need to fill you in with. Because I've got a whole calendar year's worth of videos on my YouTube channel now. So just have a look through. We'll follow through the jobs, and as I say, if there's anything a little bit different that I think I need to report to you or show you, then I will do another video. But in the meantime, have a happy Christmas, and have a very good new year, and I hope it's a very good growing season, and that we don't get hit too hard by cold weather in the latter half of the winter. So it's goodbye from me for now.